Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this panel, which is presented in association with the Association of Lighting Designers, which is a UK-based organisation with an international membership. Today's panel is about working in opera houses, and as most of you will know, opera houses also present large-scale dance work on a repertory basis, and this is the heart of what we'll be talking about today. The fact that you make a bit of the work and then they take everything away from you, and then you come back the next day and you make another bit of the work and then they take everything away from you and you have to try and remember what's going on. And you're working under particular constraints. So I'd like to start by introducing the panel. We have Tri Malten, originally from Holland, educated as far as lighting is concerned at Yale, and who's going to talk to us about work in La Scala. We have Declan Randall, who's from South Africa, who's going to talk to us about work in South Africa, but also work at Wexford Opera, which also runs a repertory system. We have Yaron Abulafia.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Who some of you, I hope most of you will have seen his fabulous work in the interview with Pamela yesterday. But he's going to talk to us about what happens when the repertory rig is not the right rig. And Peter is going to add comments. Peter Mumford is the chair of the Association of Lighting Designers, who not only lights opera and ballet, but also directs films about, or films of opera and ballet. Is that?
It's been a while.
Yeah, but yes. And my reason for being here is that I used to, mostly is because I used to manage the process at English National Opera. So let's start off with a day in the life of an opera house stage. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and there's a bunch of people finishing off work. Imagine that we have 3 operas in this opera house at any one time. We've got Opera A and Opera B, which have already opened and they're running. They've got performances on stage. The next one in is Opera C. So we've got Opera C, Act 1 on stage. Slightly drunk. It's an opera house, what do you expect? And 9:30, or of course at 9:25 if we're in the UK, the half-hour call for the stage and piano rehearsal. Now, stage and piano rehearsal is a stopping rehearsal. The director can stop at any point and re-block, redirect. It's the first time that the cast have been on the stage for a lot of the time, so there's a lot of, will that entrance work? Is that positioning correct? And there's maybe some stops that might be of use to you, but it's not your time. And then at 1 o'clock, everything finishes on Opera C. And we're back into the repertory. Opera A is being put on stage for the evening performance, half-hour call, evening performance, in front of paying audience at 10:30, say, the curtain comes down on Opera A, and we have a turnaround, and overnight, the set for our opera, Opera C, is put back on stage, but this time we're looking at Act 2, because the next day, the same thing happens again with Act 2. Okay? Now, sometime later... Sure. That would depend. It would depend on how much time you've had to set it. And at E&O, almost certainly yes. Not necessarily in other places. Okay.
What was the question?
Sorry, the question was, for a stage and piano, are you expected to have the right lights?
The answer is it varies.
Yes, indeed. So sometime later, the day before opening night, because opera singers can't, won't, or don't sing 2 leading roles on consecutive days. So we have the dress rehearsal on the same day, rather. So we have the dress rehearsal on the day before, or maybe 2 days before. We do the dress rehearsal in the morning. All 3 acts with the orchestra, and that does not stop. There are some 100+ people on stage and in the pit, all of them being paid quite a lot of money, and in any case, it has to stop at 1 o'clock, because that evening we have Opera A back on stage. And then overnight we turn it back into Opera C, and then we finish up the opening night for Opera C. We've got Act 1 on stage for 8 o'clock in the morning, and maybe you've got a little bit of time. But remember that the next time you see that opera is for the world's press, and how much of a change are you going to make if you can't actually see it happen before it gets out? It's not always as bad as that, but often it is. Any clarifications or questions on that? It's a very rough sort of sketch of how an opera gets put together. So, in that case, I'll hand over to our Scala expert. Do you feel that you can ask questions?
I need technical assistance.
If you unplug the adapter, it might help, because it senses.
I have to unplug them.
Yeah, and then put it back.
And then
Yeah.
Plug it back in that one.
Think about
Press
it.
select.
And they have to reboot.
Yeah.
No.
There we go.
Nasty. Okay. Nasty. Did something really nasty to my computer. Okay, that's better. Okay, so what I would want to talk about is the Romeo and Juliet by Sasha Waltz that I loaded into the La Scala last December, and then it was actually an original design by David Finn. As you can see, the loading schedule is 10 days between the 9th of December and the 19th of December. But these days were not, all working days, and many things happened in between those. To give you an idea of what the show was, this is pictures of the production. So it's Romeo and Juliet. There's a huge white stage that opens for the balcony scene, and there's stuff underneath, there's stuff above. Then when Romeo goes running around in town, it looks like this, and then towards the end it looks like this. This is actually the curtain call, and you can see Juliet's grave is on the lower part, and there's a huge chorus that is both on stage and off stage. It's enormous. And then La Scala thought it's a ballet, easy, just do it easy. It's like not a big opera, but just do it. What I had to work with is, this is the light plot that I got from Paris, and very quickly, La Scala didn't have any of this. So they didn't even have ballet towers that would contain them. They only have the narrow ones. They promised big ones, but they never appeared. There's moving lights on the ballet towers that had to be roving, because, is that a British term also?
Yeah.
Roving. Because it was in rap with Lohengrin, to start off with, and then a different opera next to it. Other trouble of this show was that David insisted, you can see it if you can see it here, these wonderful sharp shadows are made by Goya's. Goya is a big ass 5K television light, basically. And they need louvers, and they had color changers, and they were not to be found in Italy. So later we heard that they rented them from France, and then the louvers came from someplace else, and then, yeah. So it was interesting in that sense. But especially the turnover with these rovers made it very, very complicated. On the first day, this is day 1 of the load-in, and you get your schedule, and it says, available to the technicians, a disposizione della tecnica. Now you think like, oh, that's my time. It isn't. They're loading in the set. You know, you're not welcome. Now, if you know the master actors, they're loading in set. They're loading also in lights, but the lighting designer is not really welcome. So you negotiate and say, okay, can I come in around maybe 11? Because you have to position the things, you know, according to the set also. So they're going, oh, blah, blah. There's not going to be any focus. They'll not turn on the lights. This is for the technique. Then, in the evening, you say, oh, God, they're doing a prova di scena, number 1. It's a spacing rehearsal. So they have, you think like, oh, finally I can turn on the lights. You cannot. The director will do a spacing rehearsal. And she'll go back and forth, and she'll be on the stage, and the dancers will be on the stage, and the work lights are on. Now, if you have been talking to the master electrician or your lighting guy, you can maybe do some moving lights. So you whatever you can do with the work lights on, they're not going to be turned off. You focus your moving lights. So at least you have something. This is day 1. Day 2, you have a 6-hour focus. 4 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. You try to bang it out. All the overstage will need to be yo-yoed. That means that you need to have the correct technicians also, because electricians cannot do the fly system. you need a special technician to do that. Then another sort of little note on that is if there is not great specials in the front of house, you leave the front of house to the technicians, because since they're in rap, and they do it all the time, within no time they'll just do whatever they always do. So you leave the front of house alone, except for the specials. They kick you out at 4 o'clock sharp, because there's a big changeover too, and this time it was a concert, so they push everything back. All the rovers have to move, and they put up concert shells, and they do a concert in the evening. Next day, since there was a concert, it is again technical time, and they have 2 more hours of changeover. In those 2 hours, they will refocus whatever they unfocused for the concert. They will refocus if they have their focus now from your show. But you won't be there. You're not welcome. You're not welcome. And then there is your second spacing rehearsal. in which you may turn on the lights, but actually not really. But, yeah, so they'll want to work with work lights, and you do some more. Once they start going into Act 2, and for instance here in the balcony, you do some more moving lights, and see whether the Goyas need more time or anything like that. And then at 2 o'clock, you'll be kicked out. And they do a changeover to Lohengrin this time. And Lohengrin was humongous. They had 3 enormous sets and water on the stage, and it was like really bad. And it starts at 8, and it's a 5-hour opera. It comes down at 1 o'clock at night. At 1 o'clock at night, there is a crew coming in, and they do the changeover out of Lohengrin back into the show that you're doing. But they haven't refocused. So in the morning, they on day 4, they focus until 1 o'clock. They do whatever set they need to do. They clean. There's the stage hands on stage. If you're in real bad shape with focus, you can plead. Because the electricians are there too, and you can focus, but with the work lights on. They're not going to turn nowhere. So you can put cues in the board, for instance, and all. Then there's the 3rd spacing rehearsal, 3 hours. And you may start to turn on some lights and take a look at them. If you promise them not to ever dump them into the dark, because they'll have your head. You have a nice 1 hour of focus time, probalushi. 1 hour. You can do whatever you want to do. You can do dry tech. You can focus, you can, it's your time. There's nobody going to be there except for the technician, the electrician. And then there is the prova di insieme. Now this is what it means, it's everybody's there. So the orchestra walks in, and now it's not the director's time anymore. It is going to be the conductor's time. It's never your turn. It's the conductor's turn. So he will do the orchestra, he will go back and forth, or he'll push through, or he will say, okay, since I don't have a chorus, I will only do the soloist. And since I only have the soloist, I need to start at Act 3. Okay, well, you scramble and you go to Act 3. Then they did actually what they often do also around this time is what they call in Germany a Sitzprobe. They may do it now, they may do it a little bit later in the process. And that means that the orchestra is in the pit and the singers are on the stage and they're all sitting on the front edge of the stage. They're not moving, and they sing, and there's music, and you kind of go like, why don't they move? Why can't they move? But they'll, this is what they do. Day 5. You have a probalushi. It means that you have a dry tech. You need to have light walkers. You need to ask for them. You'll have a god mic, or you'll have somebody with a god mic, and you set your cues. There's no music, there's no nothing, there's no nobody, but you can bang out your cues. And a dry tech means that you set lights on the stage. without music or without anybody there, just there.
Well,
And move scene.
Yeah.
And no scenery.
Well, depends, but usually you can move scenery. If it's a complex
Yeah.
set, then they'd be doing, and especially if performers are involved in moving things, then they will be moving things.
Yeah.
Or if there's any risk at all of injury to the performers in any set change, then you will do the set changes so that the performers are aware of what's
Are
happening.
aware. Yeah.
And often they come to us.
Then they do another orchestra rehearsal in which the conductor decides. They give you another hour to do focus notes or more cue notes. They do their third orchestra rehearsal, and this dry tech without anybody on stage or just light walkers. You have 10 hours of that to get through an hour and a half show or 2-hour show. Then day 6, another dry tech. Then there's a piano rehearsal, meaning the orchestra's gone and there's a piano in the pit, and they go. It's usually a run, so they start at the top and they go through the entire thing. There's no chorus except. You have to fix everything. Now, what they have in Italy, I don't know whether they have that in England too. They have a maestro della luce, which is a cue caller. They have that in.
We have a proper stage manager.
You have a proper stage manager. So in Italy they have stage managers that are basically herding the chorus. Yeah.
We haven't been in rehearsal.
Yeah. The stage manager and the maestro della luce is truly, they have the calling script and they have all the cues in the calling script. If they get the calling script, so you better have that with you yourself. And they need to start calling the cues. So you have yet another layer to think about, that you need to drag these people along too, that they understand where the cues fall. Again, day 6, change back over to Lohengrin and do the 5-hour opera and do the changeover from midnight to 8 o'clock in the morning. And so on day 7, you're not allowed in until 11 o'clock in the morning, unless you're good friends with the technicians. And they finish the changeover. Then they have their second piano rehearsal, another dry tech, and the dress rehearsal. And in this dress rehearsal, you can expect to have about anywhere between 100 and 500 people in the audience. Even though it's a dress rehearsal, these are friends and family. Should I talk about the disaster? Let's not talk about
the war stories later.
We'll do the war story next. Then dress rehearsal has happened. You have then, like Nick said, you have 8 more hours to do as dry tech, as prova luce. They do an hour of cleanup, and you have your tryout in the evening on day 8, and that's it. The tryout is full audience, and there is no more working time, because the next time you see it is 3 days later and it's opening. So between the tryout and the opening night, there's no more work time. So if anything happened, you're screwed. Technical. I do very technical terms. So this is this is La Scala. It was actually, since it was a ballet, they thought they could do it very quickly, and so I added up all those hours. So in principle, you have a 45 and a half hour lighting time, working time, over 8 working days. You have 20, on that you have 25 hours of dry tech, including focus, notes, cue setting, whatever you need, that's your time. There's 6 hours of spacing rehearsals, 8.5 hours of musical rehearsals, and 2 piano runs. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering between first, like dress rehearsal actually, like you have 150 people, whatever. So how much of your work is already done? I
It
mean,
needs to be done.
It's most of it done.
It needs to be most of it done because, yes, you have a full working day afterwards, but you won't quite see it with the dancers on stage anymore. So, there's 8 hours of dry tech that is basically for shaving, timing, focus, touch-up focus, so that it's really there. But you should be about done. Yeah. Yeah, it's really.
Quick question
Yeah.
for several. First one is on day one, prior to the rehearsal, even though that's working live, but the set, the scenery, the set, the platform, and the lighting has already.
They do a pre-hang. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they do a pre-hang. So this first day. They do a pre-hang over stage, but mainly, so where are we here? And at that day, they load in the rovers, for instance, but they have done a pre-hang. Yeah.
So, and the second.
But you work in La Scala. You work within a rap plot. So. You work, the overhead is there, the manteau and the bridge is there, front of house is there. And only if you have extreme desires, like the Goyas, they'll put that in overhead. And the rest is whatever is there overhead, and that is for you to use. You can change color, but there's no... It is what it is.
Okay, so if the lighting designer has known that situation, has he already pre-show or pre-program of the lighting cues? Otherwise, it looks like very limited time actually for.
Yeah.
that.
Well, this was indeed a production that came out of Paris. And so the cues did exist in Paris.
But Peter, you've done shows at La Scala.
No, not La Scala. Sadly, Palermo. Which is, the thing you've got to understand with all of these, that's La Scala. It's not the same everywhere. The main point is that these opera companies are very large machines, and they're turning around very large productions on a rapid rate. Different companies have different ways of dealing with it. I've just been at the Met, and all the new incoming productions have a week of summer tech before they've even started being rehearsed. So we have the stage, we have the set built, we have walkers, we have everything, and it's totally for lighting and making the set work. Then you go away for this particular production. It doesn't happen until February. When we go back in February, they're in repertoire. So if you've done your homework and you've actually pre-lit a structure on the show, which is what we do in that time, you actually put it on the book of the stage management and light it without performance. When you go back, you only get a 5-hour day. because they're doing exactly the kind of turnaround every day and night. And so you literally go at 9 o'clock in the morning and you finish at 3, 2, and you're in orchestrals, so it's music driven.
Yeah.
So you have to have done your homework, but you get a week in the summer before that when they shut down the theatre for 5, 6, depending on how many shows they've got, new shows they've got coming in. So you have that time totally technically. At ENO you'd get 10 days now in production, exclusively in theatre, before it goes back into repertoire, and you would get lighting sessions. As I said, my only Italian experience is Palermo, with Damnation of Faust, which we did, the one that was at ENO and got taken there. It was hell on earth. I've never experienced such a time in my life.
So,
But that's not, what I'm saying is it's not,
Yeah.
it's different places, and I mean there are lots of
There's
highly.
One short question. How many lighting technicians are there on every shift?
There is 3 crews of lighting technicians, and you work with. There's a go-between. So there's, let's say, the master electrician,
Yeah.
who is your point of reference, and he has 3 crews that are rotating.
But how many are there?
About 10 to 15.
Yeah. On different positions.
Yeah.
Fixed
Yeah.
positions. Yeah.
No, I
Okay.
don't think they have truly fixed positions. No.
It's not like 2 in front of the house, 2 on the bridges,
No.
2 on the floor.
No.
It's like it's in Stockholm. That
No,
they're
you
done
have
to
to-
specialized
That's
for specific positions, and they know the repertoire of the house, and so they know
They-
how.
They do start out there, but once they're done front of house, they'll always go back to front of house. And once they're done front of house, they go down and do other things too. But they indeed are responsible to focus front of house. Yeah.
But it is true that a lot of the opera houses do have specific areas that and they've got individual heads of department who are responsible for one side of stage, another side of stage, one side of front of house, the overheads, the bridges. There'll be different people in charge of each,
Yeah.
each area, and that generally that's helpful.
if you hit them at a good time, like any machine, if it's well kept, well oiled, well led, it can be.
Oh yeah.
It's never going to be a breeze. This is hard work, but it can be very productive. If you hit the machine at a bad time, if there's been some illness, if there's been a show that's gone badly wrong before you, you can arrive and your crew are already on their knees, and it can be quite hard. Jenny, you had a
I just wonder if there's union regulations, things like a show call and a rehearsal call and
Yeah.
a union call.
Yeah, during these tech times, and it didn't happen this much this time, but when I was there the year and a half before with Jennifer, it was very interesting because the board ops could not sit behind the monitor for more than 2 hours. On medical regulations. So they every 2 hours wanted a break of at least 15 minutes. Then the chorus was on a 1.5 hour turnover for breaks, and the orchestra would walk out every hour for 10 minutes. So we didn't realize, because you get this schedule and it says you have a 3-hour rehearsal. So on the second day, I realized that there's telephone calls going back and forth, and we go like, what's going on? And it comes out that board ops didn't want to work anymore because they didn't have their break. And so then we needed to stagger and plead with them and say, okay, so why don't you work an hour and a half and then take a 10-minute break and work another hour and a half? Would that be okay? Because then, we can do it together with the chorus. So, yeah, unions are very much there.
It can be very strong. Equally, I arrived last year at the Marinsky with Pelias and Nelson, And then for me, they'd schedule lighting sessions till 5 o'clock in the morning every day. I like to say, what with rehearsals. But they, you know, they just work around the clock. You know, it doesn't seem to be as long as you want.
But then it's double pay between 12 midnight.
For them, not for me.
Yeah, for them, yeah.
You have just taken the word.
Thank you. Declan.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello everyone. Coming from South Africa, we've had a slightly different system, and it's changed obviously over the years with the change of government. I was lucky that when I started doing what we're doing, we still had the arts councils in place, we still had them running in rep. Basically we had, well they still have, but 4 major cities, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, 5 major cities, Bloemfontein and Durban, and each one of those had an opera house, state funded. Each opera house had its own resident opera company, ballet company, dance company. It was extraordinary. The money that was poured into the arts was just astounding. And that's all falling away and various things, but neither here nor there. But the problem is, or was, that you were, again, doing stuff in rep, so you'd be lighting an opera in Johannesburg. The problem is that opera, once it was in the rep of that building, once that season was finished, it would then go on tour around the country. So you were not only lighting the same, or, you know, turning stuff around in rep within the one house, you were replicating it in all the other theatres around the country. And being the nature of when they were all built at different times, which means they all had slightly different equipment, so you were dealing with changes in equipment as well as spaces. The only advantage is it was the same architects and consultants, so they happily made all the same mistakes in all 5 theatres. From that point of view, it was one saving grace. But, I mean, there was a thing that they redid the Johannesburg theatre at one point, and they were sitting in a meeting, and the various light and bobs all come together, and they said, guys, basically they're modelled on the German opera house, so big proceeding theatre, orchestra pit, big lighting bridge just behind the cross, 5 other bridges on stage. And one of the lighting guys said to the consultants in one of the sort of design meetings, Bridge 4 notoriously is not a bridge, it's just for all the other Basel bridges you could climb and walk on them and do your focus, except for L4. He says, logic tells you L4 is going to be the highest bar on stage because of what your sight lines are doing. You have to turn that into a bridge. Consultant refused, point blank, don't you tell me what to do. End of the meeting, he went to that designer and said, you know what, you were right, but I wasn't going to admit it in front of the client. So there we go. So anyway, be that as it may. So that's kind of, I mean, all of that sadly has fallen away because I think working in rep develops a skill set that you just can't get anywhere. You learn a set of skills that is just, it's absolutely, you just don't learn them anywhere else. I mean, the one thing that is extremely important is the need, and you learn how to prepare because you don't have the time. And you have to absolutely go in knowing what the opera's about. You need to know the music. Ideally, if you've had enough time in rehearsals, you can almost have pre-cues within the book with the stage manager like that, and that's stuff that you only learn when you're under that sort of kind of precedent environments. You mentioned light walkers. I'm not sure light walkers are generally any good because the ones I've had have been just sort of casual students looking for, you know, work and things, and you'll say, do me a favour, go and stand upstage. No, upstage, no, okay. Stand on the left, no, your left, no, other left. By the time you're finished, I'm not entirely sure you've saved any real time with light walkers.
Both UK, or both London opera houses, that job tends to be taken by junior members of stage management. And it does depend on which stage management team you have. Don't let me hear this. I'm trying to someone.
In Tokyo, it was the technicians, and they were brilliant.
Yeah.
No, sure, it makes a difference when they understand at least up and down and left and right and prompt and OP.
But if it's stage management, they will have been in rehearsal, and they will. Some of them will be noting the blocking because they know that's what they've got to do.
And again, it's the same thing. There's a repertory plot that exists in the venues. You can change colour, you can do a little bit of focusing, but there was pretty much fixed focus washes, and then you would adjust the specials in the front of house and things that you need. So that's all sort of a fairly consistent system, I think, across everywhere. And then a couple of years ago I did the Wexford Festival, which, for those of you who know, it's in Wexford and Ireland, and it's 3 operas, usually slightly lesser known, and it's one light designer for all 3 operas, different directors, different set designers. And the only advantage of that is but the lighting designer gets to draw up the rig. So from that point of view, yes, it's one rig serving all three operas, but the bonus is that you chose that rig, and it's usually hopefully things in the right positions and the right colours. And they work, you know, you start off and think, oh, this is easy, because the opera comes in, you've got 3 days, and then there's a turnaround, you have another 3 days, and the next week it drops down to 2 days, and you go, okay, I can do this. And then all of a sudden you get to the point where every other day is a different opera. And it's intense, it completely does your head in. The only advantage is you'll be lighting Mario, as the one case was, and something will come up, and I'm a big fan of happy accidents. And some will come and go, oh, that doesn't work for this, but I can certainly put that in the other one. So you always have double or triple sets of paperwork, because you're constantly clocking things for other operas, you're making notes of things, and so it's quite a process. And then the other issue is you have one dedicated lighting session. It's a morning session, 4 hours, and that's kind of where you need to have roughed in the whole show in those 4 hours, because that's it. After that, it's stage and piano time, where obviously you can carry on, but as everyone said, directors are running around doing their things. The evenings are your chorus rehearsals. It's one chorus who does all 3 operas. Each chorus only gets 2 on-stage calls per opera, and that's it. And most operas, the chorus are not on all the time, they're on for bits and scenes here and there. So when you come around to the chorus rehearsals, you'll be just starting to cue in a scene, and next thing, change, and now you're in Act 2, scene something, and you're going, oh, okay, well, fine, plot that, we'll come back to that. And so, you know what I mean? So it's completely out of sequence. So you really need to get your ducks in a row and develop a system that makes sense to you in terms of how you're numbering cues, what your numbering sequence is. A couple of ways I've tried to do over the years. I sometimes number cues according to the page number in the score. But that does mean that you can sometimes get yourself into a bit of a jam. Numbering them according to acts, so 100s are Act 1, 200s are Act 2, and so on. So there are a couple of little system things you can do to try and sort of help the process along. But yeah, I think the key is really having an excellent crew, and 9 times out of 10 they always are in rehearsals, because it is a unique skill set. And you as LD need to be as prepared as you absolutely can be.
And systems.
Yeah, you've got to have systems.
You have to have the system in place. How do you notate the moving lights? What is your system for the moving lights? Which positions? How are you going to number the positions? Because otherwise you're like, oh, it's the wrong. We had a special there, but what is it called?
In that situation, would you, say for Westwood, would you have 3 different time speeches with different sets? Do you kind of mark like focus points on them and that sort of thing?
Kind of. I mean, there was one sort of light plot that I would use for the program for the lighting sessions, and it was color coded according to what they were. And my numbering system was also, I knew numbers within certain ranges were intended for certain operas and things like that. So that was how I kind of sort of broken that down. But the sets, you'll see this is one of them, and the sets were so radically different. This was fine. This was just nice, big and open, and lots of lighting positions. That was fine. The other one that will come up in a second was, I think when the designer's brief to himself was, what can I do to completely screw the lighting design? And he succeeded. I mean, it was a beautiful set. Don't get me wrong. He's an extraordinary designer, but wow. It was, the stage was a double raise, it was a tilt and lift, which is a black and white checker floor. You'll recognise it when you see it. Black and white checker floor, which had a green curved foliage wall around it, and a ceiling, and he put mirrors on the so it was like, excellent, bring it on. So it was a challenge. This was and the other one was also fairly sort of open stage and quite sort of abstract, so that was fun. But it was a case we had ladders for the one that then were gridded for the others, and so there was a fair amount of turnaround between each time. The lighting guys got the turnaround down to about an hour and a half for each opera. That was all we were able. We got it down to that was what we needed to refocus.
Yeah.
There was an hour and a half of bring this in, slide that in, check that focus. There we go. That's the beast. And again, that's the other problem is you want to be involved as early on as possible. And I came onto this particular season quite late. For instance, that ceiling. Had I come on, I know on the designer not to have a ceiling, but let's negotiate as to what it is. Is it something I can backlight and actually use as a light source? All those kind of things. And we ended up, it couldn't because of the way it was made. So those are conversations that could have been had. So yeah, it was interesting.
Thank you, Declan. Any other questions for Declan? Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about having certain key numbers in your what they're for. Do any other ways of this that you have a note to sort of remind you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
The question is, with your cue numbering for shows, does the lighting console help you at all in terms of labelling and adding notes? Short answer is yes. The console we used was one that absolutely allows it. Most modern consoles, I think now, will certainly allow you to put labels in text and a fair amount of information in there. So there is a fair amount of that, but also you're keeping copious notes all at the same time. Yeah, absolutely. Paper's really good.
But also, a good programmer will actually use that facility and take their own notes on each cue, either in conference with you or independently. And there are now iPad apps and things whereby I can link wirelessly into the board and take my own notes and see what the board is showing and put my own notes in as well, although I tend to use a slightly different system. But programmers should be encouraged to use that and to take notes, because those are the guys who are going to be looking after the show afterwards. And especially in this opera repertory situation, the worry is the ability of the crews to actually look after the work and maintain it. Something which you see a very high standard of at places like English National Opera and the Opera, certainly in this country, and in America too, but not always everywhere. I've seen revivals of operas that I know don't look remotely like the way that they're supposed to look, because they've just been thrown back in off the paperwork, not off. Yeah, never mind what that says. What does it look like? So I mean, programmers who actually take those notes and put them into the actual plot on the board itself is very useful. It's also useful because somebody else might come on to program the show and they've got the notes there in front of them on the screen. So yes.
And unfortunately, those errors that come from reproducing the show 2 years later, 5 years later, then 10 years later, tend to compound themselves. And while I was at E&O, there's a famous Nick Heitner production of Xerxes that was led beautifully, I have to say, by Paul Pines. But by the time we were putting it back on the stage, he more or less relit it, in part because the equipment was now...